Let's explore whether mindfulness techniques work in social situations. This this morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found on Reddit. Difficulty being mindful in social situations? The individual wrote, I find being mindful when I am alone, especially during the workday, a tad bit easier. Now, let us continue. However, when speaking with someone at work or when I come home and speak with loved ones, I find it harder to stay mindful. I'd especially like to work on taking a breath before I respond to something people say, but it's like I'm unable to do so as my mind almost shoots my response out. I've always been a bit socially anxious, so I'm wondering what I can do to fix this. So, let us begin with broad brush strokes and then move on to the fine details. Please forgive me if I sound like a Philosophy 101 instructor, but before we can have a meaningful discussion, we must agree on the definitions of words. Otherwise we'll be talking at cross purposes. There is a very dangerous... Well, I guess I should back up for a second. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, and not in the fun, tingly way. Therefore, it should come as a little surprise that the majority of teachers, or so-called teachers, tend to follow in the path of the Buddha's wicked cousin Devadatta, and think that it's a very good thing to be rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and even cruel. Did not Shakespeare's Hamlet proclaim, I must be cruel to be kind? Yep, we all know how that ended for Hamlet, don't we? Fortunately, so these are the people who will insist that when you are mindful, you are peaceful. When you're mindful, you are concentrating on just one thing. No, you're not. That perception of mindfulness is filtered through our propensity, or through a propensity, to be rigid and controlling. That is not what mindfulness is. However, the opposite of the path of Devadatta is the path of his virtuous cousin Gautama, who we know as the Buddha, who thought it was a very good idea to be flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. On this path of being laid back and flexible, we are much more open to what neuroscience has taught us. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system, which is wired not for active concentration, but to notice, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. To notice sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. To notice emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. To notice the external, the internal, the physical, the mental, the pleasurable, the painful, the interesting, the boring, the glorious, and the grotesque. Control freaks on the path of Devadatta do not like vulnerability. They do not like messiness. But such is the path of enlightenment. Social anxiety is not an indictment. social anxiety is not antithetical to mindfulness. We can be mindful of the present moment. We can be mindful of the past. We can be mindful of a confabulation. We can be mindful of our fears. We can be mindful of befuddlement. We can be mindful of our blood turning to ice water. All these things are the fodder of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a panacea, despite the ravings of fools. After a 200-year odyssey, psychology has finally come full circle and recognized that most psychological symptoms require more acceptance than they do fixing. Introversion is not a pathology. Extroversion is not a pathology. Emotions are not a pathology. Memories are not a pathology. We have to be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we're mindful of some really painful, unpleasant phenomena. Pain is not an indictment on our strength as a contemplative. The Buddha taught an eightfold path. The seventh fold is mindfulness. The eighth fold is meditation. Just as mindfulness notices, meditation is correlated to our exhalation, where we viscerally access the parasympathetic nervous system, which is wired for physical relaxation as well as mental release. This dynamic duo of mindfulness and meditation is useful for processing the gurk we endure moment to moment. It is together they help us not only to let go. And letting go doesn't mean shove away. It means we shift from ignoring what's going on or fighting what's going on to accepting what's going on. Even if it's painful, even if it's destructive. We're all gonna die. We all get injured. We all fall sick. We are all slighted. That does not minimize the plight of such occurrences, but our job is not to be omnipotent. Our job is not to control every facet of our lives. That's a different path. Our job is to experience life fully, vulnerably, process things in a way that promotes peace and wisdom and love. These things are unleashed by the seventh and eighth folds of the Buddha's path, as well as the other six. So there's nothing wrong with seeing a therapist who specializes in social anxiety disorder. I would not work with one who relies excessively on cognitive behavioral therapy. Work with one who will emphasize accepting. However, sometimes our body's sensation are cries of unmet needs. Mundane needs, such as higher quality sleep, fresh air, sunshine, exercise, eating the foods that we have evolved to thrive upon, whole foods, such as fruits, vegetables, seeds, nuts, grains, legumes, pulses, and tubers. The more processed foods we eat, the more animal products we consume, the less emotionally resourceful we will feel. Meeting our mundane needs is not a panacea. It will not turn an introvert into an extrovert, but it can be one of many tools in our toolbox. I do look forward to exploring the finer details of all that I touched upon with you after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings of Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Taoism, and especially each sect of Buddhism. Welcome, my friends. I've done all this so that you wouldn't have to. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. We are going to rely on my latest practice text titled Easy Meditation. There are some who would say it is Buddha Cat approved. You could call it Sati Pasadi, you could call it Dhyana, you could call it Mahamudra, you could call it Shan, you could call it Proto-Zen, you could call it Zen, you could call it Mahasamdi, you could call it Ati Yoga, you could call it Dzogchen, you could call it Triksho, you could call it Fred and Ethel. But really, it's only just mindfulness and meditation. It is my intention that over the next 4 exercises, we will migrate from the clunky to the elegant and give you a real fighting chance at mastery of this whole meditation business. We're going to begin with mindfulness, which is the 7th fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Why don't I begin with the Four Noble Truths? Why don't I begin with the first fold? It just seems to work better this way. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our sympathetic nervous system. No, Virginia, it is not found in our head, but rather it is ensconced within the thoracic or ribcage region of our spinal cord. No, it has not evolved to support either extreme of mind blanking or active concentration. Instead, it has simply evolved to help us to perceive, and to do so vulnerably, passively, viscerally, and randomly. It has been said by those more poetic than myself that vulnerability is the key that unlocks the door of awareness. Perhaps we, the artists, communicate this vulnerability through the nudity of the 2 individuals comprising this archetype of meditation. Now you may be wondering, if we're not supposed to actively concentrate, then what describes our relationship with our breath? Well, that can be described as our relationship to our breath could be that of a piano student to their metronome. When we feel our body breathing in, we could silently and mentally recite the 12 syllables, perceiving this very turbulent play of mind. That would include the glories and the grotesqueries, the pleasures and the pains, the interesting stuff and the boredom, including our social anxiety. When we notice our body exhaling, thanks to our medulla oblongata, we could silently and mentally recite relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. No, Virginia, these are not affirmations. They do not have anything to do with wishful thinking or belief. They are simply ways of bringing tenets, observations of neuroscience into the realm of the visceral. So, as our first of 4 opening exercises, I would very much like to practice this for 16 rounds. But what is a round? In this context, a round is simply one inhalation followed by one exhalation. Now, I gotta warn you, because I'm doing all this jibber-jabbering, I am breathing faster than you, which means in the time that it takes me to do 16 rounds, you might only be able to do 12 or perhaps 8 rounds. That is not an indictment on you. Don't beat yourself up. A more interesting question could be, how can this oddly dressed bloke count to 16 on just the 4 fingers and 1 thumb of his left hand? That's something I like to call Bengali crease counting. I like to advance the tip of my left thumb during each inhalation. And if you wanted to, you could follow along with me. Now, this will be weird and awkward the first time you do it, like anything else. But practice this perhaps once every 12 hours or so, and within a week or a fortnight, you'll have a new skill. So let's begin with our 12-syllable exercise now. Return now to meditation, the 8th fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. We'll start with a bit of a spot of review. Every time we inhale, we are wired to notice all manner of things. Sights, sounds, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like, as well as emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. We can notice the external, the internal, the physical, the mental, the pleasurable, the painful, the interesting, the boring, the glorious, and the grotesque. A very reasonable question could be, what do we do with all this stuff? Here's the answer. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we are accessing our parasympathetic nervous system, which is ensconced within both the lower lumbar region of our spinal cord as well as the tippy top of our cervical region. This parasympathetic nervous system is evolved to support both our physical relaxation as well as our mental release. We could think of it this way. As we physically relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable, even just fractionally. Now, since all complex life forms on this planet evolve to think symbolically, let's sprinkle a little figurative language into the mix. As we physically relax into our exhalation, whatever we noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. Now, any good English teacher will remind us that a simile is only as useful as it is relatable. So, what is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be tantalizing to the eye, is rather intangible to the hand? Perhaps that is why the two individuals comprising this meditational archetype are often depicted as being translucent and as non-graspable as a rainbow. During this second of 4 exercises, during our inhalation, let us silently and mentally recite sitting tall, thus reminding our body to generate a vertical traction between our thorax and our head. During our exhalation, let us silently and mentally recite the 3-syllable verb, relaxing. We turn now to the third of 4 opening exercises. Let us explore loving kindness, 50% of the which comprises 50% of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. By the way, welcome to this morning's live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation, Buddhist philosophy, or how to apply them, simply type your question in great detail in the chat window. So we're going to start with a bit of the old bad news, good news. When we rely upon active concentration and when we rely upon active contemplation, our blood mass coalesces at this region at the bottom of our limbic system, known as the amygdala, which functions as the seat of anxiety and aggression. However, here's the good news. When we replace active concentration with passive mindfulness, and when we replace active contemplation with passive meditation, our blood mass shifts to this hunk of meat described as the anterior cingulate gyrus. In addition to being a winning answer in Scrabble, it can be found about 2 or 3 centimeters behind the forehead, and it functions as both the hub of our mirror neurons and as well as the seat of empathy and compassion and love. Perhaps this is why the greatest Dzogchen Lamas of Tibet have insisted that the highest love is spontaneous and uncontrived. Perhaps this is also why the 2 members of this archetype of meditation are classically painted or sculpted as beautiful. During this third exercise, during our inhalation, let us silently and mentally recite "Notice this" during each inhalation, and let us silently and mentally recite or continue reciting the 3-syllable verb "relaxing" during each exhalation. Let us explore effortless effort, the sixth fold of the Buddha's eightfold path. Now, this is controversial. People on the path of Devadatta, people who think it's a good idea to be rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, will say that right effort means just gutting it out and turning the Buddha's eightfold path into a torturous ordeal. That doesn't sound like a good time to me. That is weird. What's going on with the live stream? Did I push the wrong button? I did push the wrong button. Well, that was exciting. However, on the path of Gautama, the path of the Buddha, it makes perfect sense that right effort would be seen through the lens of being flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian. So let's explore how this effortless effort-biddenness works, as seen through the lens of mindfulness and meditation, always. Please consider this titillating tidbit of Tibetan art. The gal, who is the color of a cumulus cloud, appears to be actively sporting in tantric union. This reminds us that contrivance is always trumped by spontaneity. When we look at our partner passively enjoying tantric union, sometimes described as her Vajra throne, we understand that not all spontaneity is created equal, and that this scattered spontaneity that we might sample after perhaps consuming our third espresso within 30 minutes will always be trumped by the centered spontaneity that is the fringe benefit of our practice of passive mindfulness and passive meditation. Now let's wade out a little bit deeper. The more our choices, utterances, and deeds flow with the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity, the more our life can become as blissful as the real or imagined paradise or pure land or vati of a real or imagined Buddha. During our inhalation, let us kick back and watch the antics of mind, as watch the play of mind, the antics of mind, as silently and mentally we recite the demonstrative pronoun this. During our exhalation, let us relax into mind's non-graspable nature, as silently and mentally we recite the one-syllable verb ease. Having climbed to contemplative cruising altitude together as a team, let us meditate as transformatively as General Leia Organa on Argent Claws under the guidance of Luke Skywalker. Right view, or a view of impermanence, is the first fold of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Due to the magic of our sympathetic nervous system, every time we breathe in, we can observe change. We observe visual changes, auditory changes, kinesthetic changes, gustory changes, olfactory changes. We observe emotional changes, intentional changes, cognitive changes, recollective, mnemonic changes, as well as phantasmagoric changes. Perhaps that is why this couple, consisting of or comprising this archetype of enlightenment, are depicted in Sexual Congress. For everything about Sexual Congress is a study of change, bodies in motion, respiration, sweat, sensation, sound, emotions. All these things are in play during Sexual Congress. What a wonderful archetype. There are the elitists who would say, oh, Buddhist wisdom training is very, very difficult. No, it's not. We see change right in the world around us all the time. With the changing of the seasons, we see the impermanence of a year. With the waxing and the waning of the moon, we see the impermanence of the month. With the rising and the setting of the sun, we see the impermanence of the day. With the swelling and the sinking of our chest, we feel the impermanence of our breath. Ever changing, one and all, there is nothing permanent to grasp. Welcome to this live stream. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or Buddhist philosophy, please type your question in great detail in the chat window. Let us bring the 5 regions into the path of bliss and letting go. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever lower abdomen we might have noticed during our previous in-breath can now begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable, as real or imagined Amoghasiddhi Buddha, comprised only of emerald-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever navel region we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable, as real or imagined Ratna Sambhava Buddha, comprised only of gold-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever chest we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable, as real or imagined Akshobhya Buddha, comprised only of sapphire-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever throat we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable, as real or imagined Amitabha Buddha, comprised only of ruby-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever crown or scalp or top of our head we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable, as real or imagined Vairochana Buddha, comprised only of diamond-colored light. During our inhalation, let us, what's the word I'm looking for? Let us kick back and watch the antics of mind as silently and mentally we recite the demonstrative pronoun this. During our exhalation, let us relax into mind's non-graspable nature as silently and mentally we recite the one-syllable verb, ease. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever lower abdomen we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a mustard seed sized syllable ah comprised only of emerald colored light. Whoops, wrong button. Wrong lever. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever navel region we might have noticed during our inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a mustard seed-sized syllable tram comprised only of gold-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever chest we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a mustard seed-sized syllable whom comprised only of sapphire-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever throat we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a teeny tiny mustard seed-sized syllable free comprised only of ruby-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever crown we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a real or imagined teeny tiny mustard seed-sized syllable om comprised only of diamond-colored light. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever spaciousness or openness we might have perceived during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast open space. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever wind element or dynamism we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which, although could be quite tantalizing to the eye, is non-graspable to the hand. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever warmth we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel as if it was as non-graspable as a vast, empty void. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever solidity or earth element we might have perceived during our previous inhalation could begin to feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever moisture we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel less graspable. Let us return our attention to this archetype of enlightenment. Its members are described in Sanskrit as Samantabhadaram, Samantabhadri, Karma Mudra. They are described in Tibet, or Tibetan, as Kuntuzangpo, Kuntuzangmo, Yabyum. They can be described in English as the All Good Ones, sporting in Tantric Union. How are we like the All Good Ones? What is our Tathagata? What is our Buddha nature? The very fact that each of us has a sympathetic nervous system optimized for mindfulness, a parasympathetic nervous system optimized for meditation, and an anterior cingulate gyrus optimized for empathy, means that we are wired to master, no less practice, the Buddha's Eightfold Path. Let us bring the 5 aggregates into the path of awareness and letting go. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever physical experience we might have perceived during our previous inhalation could feel non-graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever feelings of pleasure or pain we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever appraisal of the intensity of pleasure or pain we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever impulse to fuck, or feed, or fight, or flee, or faint, or fawn can now feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever awareness we might have experienced during our previous inhalation can begin to feel less graspable. Let's bring the 5 mental poisons into the path of awareness and letting go. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever befuddlement we might have noticed during our inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever competitiveness or jealousy we might have noticed during our inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever craving we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever pride or grasping or clinging we might have noticed during our previous inhalation could begin to feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever hate we might have experienced during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever duality of object, eye, and sight you might have noticed during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever duality of fragrance, nose, and smelling we might have experienced during our inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever interdependence of sound, ear, and hearing we might have experienced during our inhalation can begin to feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever interdependence of flavor, tongue, and taste we might have noticed during our inhalation could feel less graspable. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever interdependence of sensation, body, and feeling we might have noticed during our inhalation can begin to feel less graspable. Let us seal this morning's practice by percussively chanting the Heart of Wisdom Sutra. It is in the Wanji and Busa, an archetype of love and letting go, while moving in the deep peace of the perfect understanding of awareness and release. Shed light on the five aggregates and found them to be equally empty. After this realization, she made peace with all pain. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Form does not differ from emptiness, emptiness does not differ from form. The same is true with feeling, appraisal, impulse, and awareness. Listen, Shariputra, all phenomena are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither corrupted nor purified, neither increasing nor decreasing. Therefore in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no appraisal, no impulse, and no awareness that once perceived cannot be released. No sensation, no flavor, no scent, no sound, no sight, no phenomena that once perceived cannot be released. No body, no tongue, no nose, no ears, no eyes, no mind that once perceived cannot be released. No feeling, no tasting, no smelling, no hearing, no seeing, no noticing that once perceived cannot be released. No interdependent origins and no extinction of them, from confusion to aging and death that once perceived cannot be released. No stress, no confusion, no liberation, no path, no understanding, and no attainment that once perceived cannot be released. Because there is no attainment that once perceived cannot be released, the bodhisattva archetypes of awareness and letting go supported by the perfection of understanding, find no obstacles for the minds that once perceived cannot be released. Having no obstacles that once perceived cannot be released, they transcend the tyranny of fear that once perceived cannot be released. Liberating themselves forever from the tyranny of illusion in realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas of the past, present, and future, thanks to this perfect understanding of noticing and releasing, arrive at full right and universal enlightenment. Therefore one should know that this perfect understanding of noticing and releasing is like a great mantra, is like an unequaled mantra, the destroyer of the tyranny of all suffering, the incorruptible truth. A mantra of Prajnaparamita's perfect wisdom of awareness and release could therefore be proclaimed. This is the mantra Gate Gate Para Samgate Bodhi Swaha. Go completely, and perfectly go to enlightenment, may it be so. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 10 hours or so, I would very much like to return to lead today's evening meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.